morning. Thank you for taking a few moments with me in the Word today. The Lord's been talking a lot to me lately again about the goodness of God. It's so important for us to understand and believe the goodness of God because His goodness is His glory. When Moses asked the Father to show him His glory, the Father didn't deny him. The Father said, "I'll make all my goodness pass before you." And here's something I think is very interesting. The Lord had pointed out to me in Genesis chapter 3. We find the fall, and the enemy is wanting to seduce Eve, and he successfully did. And she ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, first of all, let's think about the knowledge of good. God didn't have an issue with them knowing, having the knowledge of good, where in fact they did have the knowledge of good. When we look at Genesis chapter 1, and as God is creating the heavens and the earth with each place, he'd say, and it was good. And in the end, he said it was very good. And so they knew the goodness of God. But there was that knowledge of evil. And they ate that, and it says in verse 8, in the cool of the evening, and the man and the wife heard the Lord God walking around in the garden. So they hid from the Lord God among the trees in the garden. The Lord God called to the man and asked him, "Where are you?" And he answered, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." Now, if we just read that, verse 10, without going into verse 11, then we could think, all right, they weren't naked before the fall, but now they're naked. And I have taught, and many others have taught, that indeed that's what it was, that they were now stripped of the glory. And I believe that's true, but let's listen to what God says. He says here in verse 11, he says, "Who told you that you were naked? Did you eat from the tree? Did you eat fruit from the tree I commanded you not to eat?" So God didn't imply that they were never naked, but it's like, now, why are you seeing yourself as naked? And here's the thing, that one of the truths, and a very important truth that I think that we can get out of this, is God wanted his man protected from the knowledge of good and evil. That he wanted Adam and Eve, he wanted his man to measure their lives according to the goodness of God. But when their eyes were opened to the knowledge of good and evil, now they have two measuring sticks, if you will allow. And now, but they're leaning towards that measuring stick of evil. And now when they look at themselves, they see themselves as insufficient, as not enough, as how could they ever fulfill the assignment that God has given them. Now, we are insufficient without God. But with God, we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And that was the position that Adam and Eve held with God. That's good. That's goodness. And that's how they were supposed to measure their lives. But now they're measuring their lives by not enough, not, I can't do this, I don't have enough, I don't measure up. They're not measuring themselves by God and his goodness anymore. They're measuring themselves by their own self-sufficiency, which never measures up. And so I thought that was interesting to look at that like that. Child of God, measure yourself according to what God has said about you and what he has said about your circumstances. Measure your life according to his promises, according to his greatness. Don't measure yourself by yourself. Don't measure yourself by your sufficiency. Without God, it's never enough. Measure yourself by him and his sufficiency. I love you, and I look forward to being with you again next week.